Hey guys, quick video about before the show tonight. We're going to be doing a decentralized news podcast, 8 o'clock Eastern Time, for about an hour. I just wanted to jump in and bring up the Central African Republic. If you're not familiar, it's in the center of Africa. It's never been a republic. It's being pushed systematically again by the same people in the same media outlets as the next intervention for humanitarian causes or whatever. There's been articles in NBC. They talked about it on the Today Show. They followed it up with a nightly news, special report about the condition of the children in the, I'm just going to call it the CAR because that's what it is. They're pushing the starving children. We have to go in there and stop the humanitarian crisis that has unfolded. It hasn't just unfolded, but I will get into that. This is what they do when they want a war. They did it with Syria. They did it with Iraq. They do it with a lot of African countries to get us in there. Mali, Chad. When they wanted to split Sudan between North and South Sudan because the Chinese were involved in oil in one area of the country and we had oil in the other area of the country, we decided, how about we split the country? We backed groups based off ethnic lines and they split the country in half. So this is not the first civil war that we are involved in. And we do the same thing over and over again. We get involved in civil war, but before we actually start sending weapons in, we have to, demonize in one side and make the other side, completely innocent. Now, of course, women and children are innocent always, but, this is what we're going to do. We're going to use and this is what I'll get into here, in the CAR, they've been, and the reason I'm talking like this is because this is not news to me. The Central African Republic has been fought over proxy style by the Chinese, the Russians, and the United States for a while here. And now I've been reading articles since back from 1999. I wasn't reading them then. 2013, 2005. It's been an unrest for decades. It's never been a place since the French left where really you had a stable system of government. You have something like 18 tribes. They all speak their own language. Sorry about that. But what has happened recently, and this is a recent thing, is the country has gone back to being split on religious grounds. So you have a Christian population and a Muslim population within the country. Now, again, they're all different tribes. They all speak different languages, but just that's the religious. And I was watching, Vice videos from 5-6 years ago when they were starting to talk about this again and ramping this up again. And just other videos of BBC on the ground, and the vibe was just like it was when you cover Iraq or Ukraine or any place where magically there's a civil war erupts. Most of the people say, "Oh, we had no issues. The Muslims had no issues with the Christians. We all lived side by side." And then all of a sudden, well, what happens is the elements on either side that are fringe and extremists, those are who we focus on. The Russians, the United States. When we're putting money in, we want to make sure that we don't just have the politics, we also need a military arm. And those groups become more and more prominent as the country descends into madness. They become more and more powerful, more people push to them, and then it's really kind of thrust on the rest of the population. So the central government, being as corrupt as it always is, I think there's even Russians. Yes, we got a Russian special security advisor to the president. So here you go. Here's the geopolitics. You have a third world country with a corrupt government that's, a guy comes in. I was reading a story about how the president was taking funds for some research project, and he was funneling them to his wife's business. Things like that. Just normal, I'm really a warlord, but you call me the president type governing system. And, of course, there are radical groups that come up against the central government. In this case, there were multiple rebel groups, much like a Syria or a Iraq, where there's like 10, 11 different groups. Well, they've all come together, and they've come together and under one umbrella, and they're Muslim. But started more out as like everything else, more of a nationalistic. The religion wasn't the factor. I mean, it might have been a common denominator among the people at the meetings, but it wasn't about Allah to start. But now you have one group, and now they're becoming more violent. They're attacking Christians. The Christians are fighting back. The Christians are also not that the central government is Christian. It's the central government is collapsing, and now we need to figure out which side's going to take over. Now, the reason this is coming up and I'm warning you about this because, it's going to hit CNN soon, and then all of a sudden the propaganda is going to start flowing. The aid workers at the UN are holding starving kids in the videos, and they're saying that, it's the worst humanitarian crisis in the world now, and it's the most unsafe place for children, which I could believe, except we've been ignoring Yemen since 2015 because Barack Obama started that war. So, just hypocrites on top of hypocrites. I'm not saying the UN people or the aid people on the ground, but, what we selectively cover. And, of course, they have the diplomat on the ground there saying that, I'm going to go back to the country I'm from and speak to the people about this. You like that? Now, of course, because one side is Islamic, it's already started in America. Now there's a ISIS threat. May or may not be an ISIS threat. So now we have to focus on providing assistance to the rebels that are fighting the Muslims, and we need to make sure that we are there to protect them and expanding our footprint. Now, I've talked about AFRICOM before, how the United States has been expanding their actual military footprint in Africa for the last 10 years at least, since the mid-2000s. And, people always want to bring up China and Russia or getting into Africa. We were there before them. We did that right. We were strategically smarter, and we got there before them. And now we're kind of shoring up militarily our areas. They're behind on that. So this whole idea that, you'll get a conservative person maybe that I'll talk to, a Fox News viewer that'll say, well, Russia and China are in Africa, so now we have to get a footprint. We've already had a footprint. That's already happened. We've been there waiting for them. So now that there's going to be an ISIS influence, that's going to be a push for, and because it's Trump, he's not going to want to send 40,000 troops, but he'll absolutely give them more money to do special ops operations and insurgency and stuff like that. That's absolute. So that's coming. So just just don't fall for it. I know people who watch this are not going to fall for it, but spread it around. When you hear it pop up, at your next office meeting, or the bleeding heart that says we got to go save the children, or don't forget. This is where Coney is supposedly hiding out from Coney, whatever Coney 2010? So yeah, supposedly he's there. It's just a shit show of a place. So now you're going to start seeing that come up. And this is the major reason I wanted to talk about this. Now you have the geopolitics of, of course, it's a mineral-rich area. But really, this is the news that is being brought to the forefront for the everyday 6 p.m. News viewer, is the Russians. the Russians are supplying arms and soldiers. They've been doing it for a year. They've been actually doing it for about 10 years. But, in the small area of reality that these people live in, it's been a year, conveniently, since Trump was in office, and the Russians are trying to take over America and the world. So for the last 13 months, they've been supplying and providing troops, and they're on the side that, of course, the United States is not going to be on. So we need to get in there and make sure that they don't back the evildoer side, and we can get in there before them and do what's right. Sorry, that's my oven going off. I don't know if that's going to stop. And the Russians have such a foothold in... Here, we're going to do this. This is going to happen. Such a foothold in the country that they have one of the president's advisors is a Russian, like an actual Russian. So, the president of the Central CAR, the oligarch that the Russians wanted in power is, sorry about that, really, but who cares, really? You got a nice little tour. So they have a Russian. I mean, we don't even. I can't think of one country. I mean, please fact check me, and if there is, that's something I'd actually like to read. Is there any Americans that are like almost the advisor, the number one advisor to a foreign leader? Like that's not. I mean, that's kind of crazy. Now, there was a peace deal that was signed last year between the two sides. And that has dissolved within a month of that happening. And that's where there was 14 rebel groups that splintered off after the peace deal, and they have become this Islamic group. On the ground, they have a name for it. It starts with an S. I can't pull it up right now, but they have a term for it, and now the Christians are fighting back, defending themselves. But as they all said, it was not a religious conflict to start with, and this is what happens. In Ukraine, you had the Russian side and the United States side. The Russian side are Russian-speaking Ukrainians that during World War II were more sympathetic to the Russians. That's what they identify as. The Americans took the other side. The other side are not Russian-speaking Ukrainians, some Polish background, more Western, hated the Russians for what the Russians did to Ukraine during World War II. However, we're not Western during World War II, or we're actual Nazi sympathizers of lots of the groups. Now, why did they side, and why did they militarize the Nazis on the pro-West side? Why didn't they, focus on the scientists and, make sure that it was a liberal democracy that arose in Ukraine? Because those people don't fight. So, again, our leaders will absolutely put in a right-wing fascist, racist, homophobe, whatever the hell you want to call them, as long as they're backing our team. And this is another country that they want to get your support when they go in there and do it. Now, it's a hellhole. So you're going to hear from all angles. You're going to hear that we have, you're going to have the special forces guys say, I'm going to go in there and save a baby in the middle of the night. Great, you are. I'm very happy for you. It's a good thing. But overall, the more external influence in the nation is the problem. Arbitrary lines, trying to centralize power in a country where this is the CAR is where like the Congo is. Like half the country is uninhabitable in terms of building any type of civilization there with transportation and the city structure. It's impossible. And, we just want to mine the resources out. So just be aware, it's coming. You can see it. I'll post the articles, but as soon as you go on, you'll see the NBC propaganda coming. So I'll post this video right now. Tonight we're going to have decentralized news around 8 p.m. We're also going to have a show on Saturday. And I appreciate you guys hanging out.